Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, eyeshadow palettes. I always say this, but I could have an entire YouTube channel just dedicated to eyeshadow palettes. Even though I feel like my eyeshadow palette obsession has slowed down a little bit over the past few years, which is probably a good thing, I still love them. I love talking about them. I love watching YouTube videos about them. So I was so excited when I saw this tag going around. It was actually created by Samantha March and Ali Glines. They did do a part one. I think it was back in 2020, and I did film it. I loved watching those videos. So part two is here. I'm so excited. If you guys don't know Samantha March and Ali Glines, I'll link their videos in the description box below. They are two of my favorites. And I'm so glad they did this video because I can't wait to watch everyone's videos. So if you film YouTube videos, I would love to see your answers. If not, I would love to read them in the comments, even if you just want to answer a couple of the questions. So let's jump into it and I'll share my answers with you. The first question is, what is your all-time favorite palette? My all-time favorite palette is definitely the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. I haven't had anything top this yet. I have had one come very close, which I think is my answer to another question, so I'll get to that soon. But this is such a good palette. I love the color story. The formula is flawless. I think the reason why I like this so much is because I love shimmer shadows, and the shimmer shadows in here are so intense and vibrant on the eyes. Natasha Denona's formula as a whole is very consistent and really good, but I just feel like this one is a step above the other palettes. The matte shadows blend out flawlessly. The metallics look so gorgeous on the eyes, and whenever I use this palette, I love how my makeup turns out. I feel like I can get a complete seamless look in just a few minutes. Now, it is a very kind of monochromatic palette, so a lot of my looks end up looking very similar on the eyes, but during the spring and summer and even fall, I love like an intense, warm, bronzy golden eye. And that's really what I do get with this palette, so I have gotten so much use out of it. It's such a stunning palette, and if you've been on the fence about it and you like warm tones, I think you'll enjoy this. If you're a cool tone fan, this probably is not going to be the palette for you. I also like her glam palette, but bronze really is my number one. The next question is, what is a new favorite? I actually picked this palette up during the Sephora VIB sale last year, and it's not a new palette. I think it actually came out during the holiday season in 2020, I want to say. And at that point, I had purchased a lot of new palettes already, so I decided to skip over it, but it's been on my wish list ever since. So I finally decided to grab it, and I'm so glad that I did. This is the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude palette. I do have this on my eyes today. This is such a good palette. Again, the formula is just flawless. I love palettes that are just easy to use, shadows that blend out in seconds, shimmers that are so intense and gorgeous on the eyes. And again, every single time I do my makeup with this palette, I love how it turns out. I like this one because it is a neutral palette, but it's kind of like a rosy neutral palette. So you do get a couple of shades that lean a little pink toned, a little bit berry. And I love Huda Beauty palettes because I mean, I only have two, but I think I enjoyed the two that I do have, and I'm kind of curious to try more because her shimmers are just so interesting. I feel like it's hard to do something different these days, but her palettes have so many different textures, so many really pretty finishes, and the matte shadows are just good, blendable, staple matte shadows, but the shimmers are so vibrant and intense. I just have the shade Tantric on my eyes today, which is a really gorgeous, like golden shimmer, and then I have a little bit of this shade layered on top. And again, I think I just have two matte shadows, this one and then this one, and that's it. It's a very simple look. It took a few minutes to do, but I just think it looks really pretty, very well blended, and I love this color story so much. I think it is so pretty. So I am glad that I decided to grab this one because I think it will just be a staple neutral palette in my collection. It's definitely my newest favorite. I did skip over the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette, and I've gotten so many comments from you guys saying that that one is like one of your newer favorites. So I think I might end up grabbing that one during the Sephora VIB sale in the spring because it really is a pretty palette. When I initially saw the photos, I wasn't super drawn to it, but I've seen some reviews, some different looks, and I think it's a lot prettier in person than it is online. The next one is, which palette do you keep for the memories? For me, it's the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. I haven't worn this in a really long time. It is a little bit of an older palette, but I just like to have it in my collection. I like to see it because it reminds me of a lot of good times. I feel like this is one of the palettes that kind of got me into colorful eyeshadow because it just made colorful eyeshadow really easy to wear. It's a pretty simple palette when you look at it. It has 5 matte shadows, 5 shimmer shadows, but I feel like that's why I loved it so much because I could go in and build my look with any of the matte shadows. There weren't a ton to choose from, so I felt like it made it very easy. And then I would take my finger and apply one of the metallics all over the lid, typically the greens or the blues, or the green or the blues, and I feel like it just gave me the prettiest pop of color. The pink was also really pretty, and I just had so much fun using this. I forget which year this was released, but whatever year that was or the year after, I brought this with me on like every single trip. I wore it for all different fun occasions in my life, and I feel like I just have really happy memories of this palette and that time because I was really getting into colorful eyeshadow and falling in love with makeup, and that is the reason why I hang on to this one. The next question is, what is an underrated palette? I feel like I could do an entire video on underrated eyeshadow palettes because there are a lot of great options out there that I feel like don't get a lot of hype because there are always so many new palette releases. So I might do that. But the first one that came to mind was the ColourPop Lust for Dusk palette. I think this came out during the summer of 2021. And when I initially saw it, I wasn't into it at all. But I actually got it in the mail as PR. And when I saw it in person, it looked a lot more interesting. I feel like that does happen a lot. You'll kind of see like generic promo photos and it might not be a super exciting palette, but once you see it in person or start using it, you realize that the colors are really interesting. And I think that's what happened with this one. This one is such a great option if you tend to wear more toned down looks, but you want something just a little extra special, because when you use this, you're not going to get a completely out of the box, super intense eyeshadow look. You're going to get something a little bit more subtle with a really pretty pop of shimmer or a soft, subtle pop of color. So really, I think this is such a great option if you tend to keep your eyeshadow a little bit more toned down, but you want something to kind of amp it up slightly. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit, because the shimmers in here are so pretty on the eyes. There are a couple of duochromes. There are some really interesting foiled metallics. And then again, you get like your basic matte shadows that are very easy to work with. It is more of a neutral palette, like neutral in undertone, but there are a couple of cool tones, a couple of warm tones. I'm just really impressed by the quality of this one and the fact that I'm able to get a lot of different looks using it. The next one is, what is a palette that's not a favorite, but you can't get rid of it? And I thought that was an interesting question, and I wasn't sure what to answer at first, so I was going through all of my eyeshadow palettes for this video, and I pulled one out that I thought fit perfectly. It's this one. It's a little bit of an older palette. It's the ColourPop Through My Eyes palette. So this has made it through quite a few declutters because every single time I open it, I think it is such a stunning palette. It just has a really interesting color story. You get deep emerald greens, a plum, a yellow, orange, reds, pinks, silvers. Like there's so much going on in this palette. And whenever I use it, I think it's really fun. I get an interesting look, but I don't use it super often. It's definitely not a favorite of mine because I think sometimes when I look at it, I'm not sure what to do because there is so much going on. So I can't even say that I've used this a ton. I just think whenever I open it, I feel like I should use it more because it is so gorgeous. So this really fits that question perfectly. It's not a favorite of mine, but I just can't get rid of it because I think it looks really unique and I wish it was a favorite, but I just don't reach for it as much as I would like to. The next one is, what is your favorite collab? So at first I was going to mention the Desi Katie Friendcation palette because I use that one so much. It really is just like one of my favorite palettes of all time, but there's actually another one that I think I like maybe just a little bit more. This is the one that Allie actually mentioned in her video as well. It is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Jackie Aina palette. This is just one of the best palettes of all time. The quality is so good. I really think it's Anastasia Beverly Hills' best palette ever. Sometimes with Anastasia Beverly Hills, because the shadows are so powdery as you apply them to the eyes, I feel like they blend away a little bit. That's not the case with this palette. These are so intense. Like you just need the smallest amount of each shadow, which is why it doesn't look like I've used a lot of this palette, but I have used this so many times throughout the years, and it just gives you such a gorgeous look every single time. I think it's unique and interesting and fun. Jackie Aina did such a good job with this palette. It really is their best palette. The next question is, what is your favorite palette of 2021? I actually did a video ranking all of the palettes that I tried in 2021. If you guys want to check it out, I'll link it in the description box below. But my favorite palette that I tried last year was definitely the Natasha Denona Retro. This comes so close to the Natasha Denona Bronze palette on my list. Like I almost thought maybe this one would end up being my all-time favorite, but the bronze palette really is just so good. This is such a good palette too, though. If you love cooler toned pinky shades, I think you will enjoy this. I'm really impressed by the quality of this one. This one doesn't have as many shimmers and metallics as bronze or glam, and I feel like if it did, this would definitely be like my all-time favorite palette. This one has a lot of matte shadows and a lot of cream to powder shadows, but on the eyes, it is so pretty. You can definitely get a little bit more of a rosy look. You can also get a little bit more of like a true intense berry look. Again, every single time I use this, I love how my makeup turns out. I'm a big fan of pink eyeshadow in general, and a lot of the pink palettes that I have are so pink, really intense, extremely vibrant, which I do like. This one's maybe a little bit more toned down, so I can definitely get something softer, a little bit more muted, or I can get something a little more dramatic and intense. I just think, again, the quality is really good. So this was definitely my favorite palette of 2021. The next question is, what is a palette that you didn't expect to love? I didn't expect to love this one, which is why I did not purchase it when it was initially released. And then I got so many comments from you guys just throughout like the next year telling me it was one of your favorite palettes. So I decided to grab it. It is the Natasha Denona Mini Retro palette, which is funny because the Natasha Denona Retro palette is like my favorite palette of 2021. And this one also ranked pretty high. I'm just really impressed by it, by how much versatility it actually has. I think when I initially saw the promo photos, it just kind of looked like a very toned down, lackluster palette, but it's so interesting on the eyes. You can definitely get like a complete cool toned smoky eye if you use the gray shadows and then you use that like pinky silver shimmer, or you can get more of a pink look if you use the right half of the palette. I really enjoy these mini palettes from Natasha Denona. I have this one, and then I also have Mini Nude, and I would love to try more because I just feel like in general, they're so nice to have. You can get a quick, simple look in just a few minutes, and this one definitely has an interesting color story. It is more toned down and it is more muted, but I feel like it's just kind of like an unexpected palette. It always looks good on the eyes, and it's not too pink, it's not too cool toned. It really is just such a nice everyday palette. But again, you can do something a little bit smokier if you incorporate that center shade. So I ended up loving this. I have used it so much, and I'm glad that I listened to you guys and picked it up because it's such a great palette. The next question is, what is a palette that sparks joy? And I just thought this was a fun question because for me in general, eyeshadow palettes as a whole spark joy. I feel like that is my favorite part of my makeup routine. A lot of my makeup routine, it's not that I feel like I have to do it, but I feel like I'm just kind of going through the steps when I apply foundation and concealer and powder, but the part that I love that just kind of makes me happy every single time I do it is eyeshadow. And there are just some palettes in my collection that make me so happy when I use them, and I've said that about this one. It's the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde. This palette just makes me so happy every single time I use it. There's so much going on in this palette, and there are just beautiful jewel tones, there are pastels, neutrals. What I love about this palette, again, kind of similar to the Naughty Nude palette, there are so many interesting textures. There are smooth metallics, there are foiled finishes, there are shimmers that have glitter in them, so they give your eyes such a pretty look. And I don't know, every single time I use this, I love how my makeup turns out. It is a little bit more of a colorful palette, which colorful eyeshadow isn't something I've been wearing a whole lot over the past year. I feel like I've gotten away from it. So I love this palette because it's an easy way to incorporate color and it's just really fun. A ton of you guys have told me that you've picked this up over the past few months because it's been on sale on Sephora's website for like $30, and a lot of you guys said that you love it too. So if you're looking for a palette that's just fun to use, that's a little bit different and interesting and unique, this is such a great option. I think it's beautiful. The next question is, what is the newest palette in your collection? So I did get a couple of palettes in the mail as PR over the past week or two, but I wanted to share one. This actually isn't one that I bought. I actually got it for a gift, but I feel like it counts more than the ones that I've gotten in the mail as PR. This one is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. My husband actually bought this for me for Christmas, and I love it so much. It is such a gorgeous palette. It was on sale during, I don't know if it was Black Friday or just the holiday season in general, and I told him, I'm like, that palette is on my wish list. If you're looking for a Christmas gift idea, that is perfect. And he actually bought it for me. I was kind of surprised when I opened it up on Christmas morning because I wasn't sure if he was actually going to get it, and it's such a beautiful palette. This is an expensive palette. I have wanted it for years. I've never purchased it because I feel like that's just a lot of money to spend on a palette, but with the sale, it was definitely discounted quite a bit. I wish Natasha Denona would come out with a midi-sized version of this because I've never owned one of her larger palettes, but this is a big palette. I will never make it through all this eyeshadow. If I was like a complete minimalist and I didn't film YouTube videos and this was my only palette, I might hit pan on some of the shadows, but the truth is when it comes to her shadows, they're so rich and intense, you just need the smallest amount. So I feel like unless you've had it for years or you're a makeup artist, it's probably pretty unlikely you'll hit pan on multiple shadows in here. But I have to say, it really is a gorgeous neutral palette. Every single time I use it, I just love it. The shadows blend out in seconds. It's so beautiful. I don't know if this is going to top bronze or glam or retro, but I do enjoy having it in my collection. Like I said, I did get a few in the mail as PR, so if you want like my technical answer is probably the e.l.f. Cookies and Dreams, but I didn't want to include PR palettes for this question because I didn't choose to add those to my collection, although I would have purchased that one for a review. So maybe that should be my answer, but the last one that I chose for my collection was this one, even though it was a gift. The last question is, what is the first palette you used in 2022? It was this one, the Milani Gilded Flora palette. So back in December, I placed an order for a couple of new drugstore products, and I was testing them out in the beginning of January for review purposes, and this is the first one that I wore. I think I wore it on like January 2nd or January 3rd, and it's really pretty. It's so much fun for spring. If you love pinks and purples, I think you'll really enjoy this one. Milani's formula is nice. It's a little bit softer, so the shadows aren't intensely pigmented, but you can build them up, which I think is kind of nice and what a lot of people prefer. And I think the shimmers are so pretty. They just look really good on the eyes. So I've really been enjoying this one. I don't think I used it in a video. I was planning on doing like a second full face of drugstore makeup, and I just feel like there are so many videos I have on my list that I want to film that I don't know I filmed it yet. But it is coming up on my channel at some point. I will use this so you can see it in action, but it's such a fun palette. So this is the first one I used in 2022. Actually, I might have used this one. I can't remember. I don't know which one of these came in the mail first, which one I used first. They were right around the same time, so they're kind of my answers for the last two questions. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video and hanging out with me. If you guys like eyeshadow palette related videos, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. I film a lot of eyeshadow palette content. I need to film my declutter video soon, and I love testing out new eyeshadow palettes and filming reviews and things like that. So I would love to have you here on my channel. Don't forget to check out Samantha's video and Allie's video. I'll link them in the description box below, and I will see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.